Hello again, I'm Matthew from thewetpen.com, and I just got back from a month-long trip to Japan. Going into this trip, I knew that without some hard limits, a month in the pen shops of Japan would quickly lead to financial disaster, so I made some rules for myself. Many of you will already know that throughout Japan, it's common for pen shops and also bookstores and stationery shops to have their own exclusive colors of Sailor ink, and other brands too, that are generally not available online, especially outside of Japan. If you want one, you have to track down the store and actually visit it in person. I think that's wonderful. It really appeals to my love of a good treasure hunt, and it's just one more good excuse to visit bookstores, as if I needed one. There doesn't appear to be any reliable master list of these shops and inks, and production of the inks is often limited enough that popular inks disappear pretty quickly, so you never know what you'll actually find. So, my first rule on this trip was to only buy bottles of ink that are made in Japan and that are store exclusives. I came home with 32 new bottles of ink, and I think that only about 6 of them broke the rules. Of course, that's too much ink for one video, so I'm going to break this down by city and store and show you what I found, starting with Tokyo, and then the Osaka area, and then Kyoto, with some stops in between. If you want to follow along with these videos, this is a good time to subscribe to my channel if you're not already. I spent 2 weeks in Tokyo, though this was partially a work trip, so my time wasn't entirely my own. On my first full day in the city, though, I woke up at 4 in the morning due to jet lag, and wandered off in the direction of Shinjuku Station to find Kingdom Note. If you're coming from Shinjuku Station on the train or subway, it's just a 2 or 3 minute walk to Kingdom Note. But the shop is in a space that sells watches and glasses also, so it's not immediately obvious when you've found it. There is a big sign in the second floor window though. Kingdom Note has more store-exclusive inks than I could possibly take home in one trip, so I ended up buying a pretty random sampling, mostly based on how much I liked the box art. On my first visit, I got this exclusive blue called Nightfall, and 2 inks from the Insect series. I love this giant Stag Beetle, and a Cicada. When I returned later, I got this beautiful fire-bellied Newt, and this little blue Lumpfish. So let's take a look at these, starting with the Nightfall. I'm going to swatch these on some of my favorite papers as usual. I'll go with my coloring. Rhodia is nice and white, Cosmo Air Light is a little bit warmer, and Midori is more ivory. And wow, that's dark. That looks almost black until it thins out a little bit. This seems like a true blue-black, but the blue is a little more saturated. After washing off my swab here, I see that it's stained greenish black. When it dries down, it reminds me of Sailor Gentle Blue-Black, but more saturated. We do get some diffuse sheen on the coloring here, and some more prominent sheen around the dark areas on the Cosmo, and the color is quite a bit more blue on Cosmo too. On the Midori, there's very heavy bronze sheen in the darkest areas, which is pretty cool looking. Okay. Now on to the giant Stag Beetle. This looks like a dark gray or a black ink, very neutral in tone. When I tried to wash the swab, I found that it was stained pinkish red. I didn't expect that. Anyway, the swatch on the coloring is a light black, and on the Rhodia it's darker, but the coolest thing about this ink is the bright green sheen that we get on the Cosmo and Midori papers. I doubt that it'll show up in normal writing, but I'm gonna check later. Next, I'll do the Cicada. Ooh, this is a really nice green. It's an olive, but it's more vibrant than most of my olive inks, and there's a really rich range of darker tones in it. The color is pretty consistent across all of the papers, although it's a little paler on the Cosmo, and I think it looks best on the Midori. Okay, now the Firebelly Newt. This is an orangey red, which is what I expected, although it seems to be drying a little more on the red side, especially on the rhodia. There's some greenish gold sheen around the heavy areas too, which is common with this shade of red. And now let's take a look at the Lumpfish. I'm not really sure what to expect here. Aha! This is a cool blue-gray. It reminds me of the Suleika Twilight shades from my previous video. It stained my swab a greenish color, for whatever that's worth. Again, it's a really nice color, subdued rather than vibrant, and with some good potential for shading, I think. It's pretty similar on the first three papers, but the yellow of the Midori makes it look like a sort of a plain gray. With work and other responsibilities, I didn't get to go out and look for ink again until the following Tuesday, and then I decided to head out in search of Lichtope, Bungubox, and Shosaikan. I didn't realize that Lichtope, I have no idea how to pronounce that, is a very small shop in a residential neighborhood with limited hours, and when I arrived around 11 in the morning, and finally found the front door, it was closed. They didn't open until 1 in the afternoon, so I went to a local ramen shop and had a bite to eat, and then wandered around for a bit and went back. Turns out that the shop is only open to the public for a handful of days every month, but I happened to get lucky and they were open. The shop owner was wonderfully friendly and spoke English, so we chatted briefly as I looked at the exclusive inks. And I completely failed to take any photos in the shop, but they had quite a few store exclusives from Tono and Lims, which I was able to rule out because they're made in Korea, but I still had to choose between 4 Sailor-made inks, which were branded as Mitsuo. I ended up choosing these two. The Sumizome was their 2nd anniversary ink, and is supposed to be a charcoal gray with pink undertones when it's mixed with water. And this Yuren is the 3rd anniversary ink. It's supposed to be a warm brownish gray. So I'm going to swatch these starting with the Sumizome. And again, this looks like a light black, charcoal gray sort of ink. On these swatches, I don't see any of the purple or pink undertones that were a possibility, but I'll try using them with a little bit of water later. And now I'll move on to the Yuren. This ink is also on the black side, but it's quite a bit warmer. It's more of a dark brown. Although looking at all of these swatches after they're dry, on the Cosmo Air Light, it's almost sort of a purple color, very different than the other 3 swatches. That's pretty interesting. Anyway, next I looked at Google Maps to plan my route to Shosaikan, and Google said that it was closed for the day. So I skipped it and headed to Shibuya to visit Bungubox. The Bungubox shop was a good distance from the nearest station, and when I arrived, a sign on the door said that they were in the process of moving to a new space, and that they'd be closed from February 19th to March 21st. I arrived in Japan on February 22nd and was leaving on March 19th. So that was disappointing, but probably saved me a lot of money. And I called it quits for the day and went off to find some dinner. I decided I would pick up the hunt again the next day near Tokyo Station. That video will be coming out next, and if you'd like to see it and you're not already subscribed, this is a good time to do it. See you then. Okay, before I finish this, a couple of quick writing samples. First of all, you might have noticed that when I did the ink swatches for this Yuren ink, it feathered quite a bit on the Rhodia. So I thought I'd do a writing sample with it on Rhodia, and it was just fine. There's no feathering at all. This is the Sailor Nightfall from Kingdom Note, and I just thought I'd show you what it looks like when I actually write with it. There is a little bit of color, but from a distance it looks nearly black. It's really gorgeous. And probably the most exciting thing in all of these writing samples was the fact that the giant stag beetle actually does produce a little bit of green sheen when I'm writing. I love that. I did a writing sample with the Sumizome, and I tried putting a little bit of water on the paper afterwards to see if I could get any of that pink or purple that I was supposed to, but I didn't get anything. I'll have to try that again, I guess. And this is the Kingdom Note Lumpfish. As you can see in writing, it is still mostly gray, a little bit of blue, but there is plenty of shading. With a fine pen BBS nib, there's less shading, but still some, and it's a little easier to read. Okay, and that's really it for now.